She resisted months of protests, but Yingluck Shinawatra was finally forced out of office by a court ruling. The move is likely to unleash a fresh wave of political uncertainty in the Kingdom of Thailand and the ongoing power struggle. This is Inside Story. Hello, I'm Mike Hanna. Thailand's Prime Minister has been ordered to step down by the country's constitutional court. Yingluck Shinawatra has been found guilty of abuse of power. The court says she acted illegally when she transferred her national security head and gave the position to what was then a relative. Thailand's caretaker cabinet has appointed the Commerce Minister to replace Yingluck. He will be the new acting Prime Minister until July, when general elections are scheduled to be held.
The Constitutional Court has ruled unanimously that Yingluck has used her status as Prime Minister to intervene for her own and others' benefits to transfer a government official which violated Article 268 of the Constitution and ended her rule as Prime Minister.
Well, Yingluck denies any wrongdoing.
I insisted that we have used honesty to administrate the country, and we have never done anything that conveys any dishonest actions as accused.
Thailand has been gripped by political unrest since 2006. At the time, Yingluck Shinawatra's brother Thaksin was leader before being deposed in a military coup. Thaksin fled the country in 2008 and was subsequently convicted of abuse of power and corruption. Yingluck came to power in 2011, becoming Thailand's youngest prime minister and the first woman to hold the office. But since she came to power, her leadership has been crippled by a protracted campaign of protests to topple her. Those opposing Yingluck accuse her of acting as her brother's puppet. In November 2013, street clashes became more violent. Over 20 people were killed. Yingluck called fresh elections for February to shore up her legitimacy, but they were annulled and rescheduled for this July. Well, the political crisis in Thailand taking a new turn. To talk more about this crisis, I'm joined by our three guests. They are all in Bangkok today. Sean Boon-pracong, he's an advisor from the Prime Minister's office. Then we have Kasit Piromya, an opposition member of parliament. He's also deputy chair for the Democrat Party's political committee. And we're also joined by Kriengsak Chareonwongsak, president of the Institute of Future Studies for Development. Welcome to you all. Let's begin with Sean Boon-pracong. There is no appeal against this verdict, so what happens now?
Well, the decision was a travesty. It was a sabotage against administrative separation of power, where the Prime Minister should be able to appoint her person to run the security service, a practice that was done whether the United States, Great Britain, or most people. But yet this pretty much is a thrown-up charge. It's not the first time that this happened, but more or less the Constitutional Court has asked former Prime Minister Samak and Somchai, so this is the third time, and I believe that Constitutional Court doesn't have such basis to rule on this matter. But however, the result was not as negative. We still has caretaking ability to take us into the next election on July the 20th, and we hope that this time PDRC will not election, and we hope the Democratic Party could participate.
Well, we'll go into those issues in a moment, but first, from Kasit Piromya, let's get your initial reaction to this judgment.
The Constitutional Court ruling was straightforward. The Prime Minister Yingluck abused her authority, and the removal of the former Secretary General of the National Security Council was meant to pave the way for her, one of her her brother's relatives to become chief of the police. So it's nepotism in practice, and it was found to be illegal. So she went to the court, defended herself, and was being defeated in the court.
Well, Kriengsak Chareonwongsak, what do you make of all of this? We've got two differing, divergent views as there are within Thailand as a whole.
I think behind the scene there was a power struggle between the two sides, and the technicality of the laws are being looked upon favorable by one side, disfavorable by the other side, because of the political position they take. And it's clear that you can interpret either way. The Constitutional Court has a right to make ruling on some sort according to some ground that they can construe it to. I'm sympathetic to the Prime Minister for having a hard time making administrative decision, and it happened to be that the brother of the former Prime Minister Thaksin's wife is involved in getting the position of police chief, vacating that position and give that former head police chief to become National Security Council, need to vacate Kun Tavin Prensi from the security office. And that can be looked upon as if it's being done favorably for the relative. Therefore, whatever the court do, it is going to be looked upon negatively by one side or positively by the other side. And there's ground for them to do so. But at the same time, the timing that it come along at this hour make it look very political. And it may be construed as conspiracy to try to bring down the government. Therefore, I'm sympathetic to the situation of both sides. But the technicality of law is there, and there is a right of the judges to make decision. Therefore, it's very difficult to fight the decision making when there's no appeal.
Well, it has so happened that 9 cabinet ministers have been removed as well. However, the legal processes are not over. The National Anti-Corruption Commission will be deciding within the next week whether to take any action against the current government, including perhaps the dismissal of further ministers. Sean Boon-pracong, this is yet another looming threat, is it not, which would take away the argument that you had of, yes, there is still the semblance of a structure in place?
Well, we are aware of this coming onslaught, and of course, it's a most peculiar that the Constitutional Court is a legacy left from the coup makers who appointed more or less this body. And just to be fair, with the accusation of nepotism, that during when Apisit was the Prime Minister, at that time, General Pheo happened to be the most qualified, #1, ready to be the National Police Chief. His record was impeccable with narcotic policies, and when he eventually became National Police Chief, he has acquitted himself without criticism while being the National Police Chief. So I think that the nepotism has to be wonder why he was rejected in the first place. But the rules of law is required that each executive in each government could have a right to transfer official as chosen. But let's get back to NACC. It's also the legacy of the 2006 coup. So what we're having here is more or less a dictatorship of independent organization, which is a new phenomenon in Thailand. But it's more or less is a network of monarchy who are really against 20 million people who did vote in February, whose Constitutional Court ruling of disabling the validation of such. So the acts go on and on and on, and is selectively against this government that's been ongoing ever since 2001. More or less, the court has given us no break.
Well, Kasit Piromya, you have pointed out that the judgment has been made, the country moves on within the terms of it, but moving aside from the merits in this particular case, it is a constitutional court that not only, as was mentioned, has removed 3 sitting prime ministers, it's also disbanded 2 political parties. So certainly it is very much an activist court, which actions would appear to be playing into the hands of those within the Democrat movement such as yourself.
I think you are accusing the judicial system of Thailand for being biased and politicized. I do disagree with you and Kun Boon-pracong. I think they are of high integrity, very professional, and they are not against Yingluck or Kun Thaksin or anyone. The court, the cases come before them. They made judgments. Some were in favor with Thaksin and Yingluck. Some were not. So you cannot say that those are not favorable. Then the court is biased. I think that is a blatant accusation. I think civilized people should not do that. Second, don't allow Kun Boon-pracong to involve the monarchy. They are not involved. That is a lie. Only a communist or a fascist would have said that.
I must just make the point, I was not making that accusation directly against the court. I was saying that this is what many people are saying, given the circumstances of the cases it's looked at. Sorry, continue.
No, I think and before that, whether the Somchai government or Samak government, I think they did something wrong. And then they were deemed to trespass the law, so they were judged accordingly. The dissolution of the two political parties, the proxy parties of Thaksin, were found to be guilty of cheating at the elections. So you have to know, and then the coup d'etat did occur because people were going to kill each other on the street. And there were protests against the Thaksin government, his first government, for a lot of abuses of power and corruption. And these type of things do occur in his successive proxy government, including his sister, Prime Minister Yingluck, who was removed as of today.
Well, let's go to Kriengsak Chareonwongsak. Where does the country move to now? Regardless, as I said, of the merits of this particular decision by the Constitutional Court, it has been made. There is another corruption case against the current administration, which is looming. What happens now?
I think the National Anti-Corruption Commission will have to rule accordingly by evidence. If there's evidence to show that the rice pledging scheme has something which is wrong, then they are forced by the circumstances to rule against the government. But if there's not enough evidence, they will probably cannot rule that way. Therefore, it's an unfortunate thing, as I said, that timing all come almost at the same time. That would create a very difficult situation for a very tough, conflicting situation in Thailand. Therefore, the way forward is very, very difficult. I think if the ruling come out in the next few days or a week from now, for example, and it's against the Prime Minister and her party, it will be again stirring the people like the red shirt to be very unhappy, and the conflict continue in Thailand. But we don't know what to do because everyone do their job, and the design of the constitution is to have check and balances, and therefore the independent organization by the constitution are meant to curb some of the majority that need to respect the minority. Therefore, by election you cannot use election to do everything. Therefore, the design is to allow all these institutions to do it honestly, to make ruling on cases that come to them. I hope they do it in a very righteous and very just way. And it's a difficult situation, as I said. No matter what they say, it's going to be problematic. And therefore, Thailand is still in a turbulent situation. Stability hopefully will return if there's some amicable solution that we can find a way forward now. But if we don't negotiate some kind of solution that is acceptable by all and yet by the rule of law acceptable, so that we don't violate any constitutional articles, it's going to be tough for the country. Therefore, I don't envy the Constitutional Court. I have serious suspicion that something that has been going on in evidences that is being portrayed in the newspapers, in the various sources, may come out negative against the government, and that may bring repercussion. But I understand, and things has to be worked out, and I still hope that there will be some negotiation that will keep every side happy, so that there will be a solution. Because political vacuum will happen, no doubt, if it comes this way, and no country can be without government. And the election is not even set
Let's just pause at this point, if I may, Kriengsak. Apologies for interrupting you, but let's just pause at this point and take a look at Thailand's political landscape. A number of political players in Thailand have for years been battling for power. There's the Shinawatra family. That family's political power base is among Thailand's rural poor, the so-called red shirt movement. They see the institutions of power and the country's urban elite, including the courts, as prejudiced against them. Then there's the Democrats, led by opposition leader Sotep Thagsuban. They traditionally draw support from the Bangkok-based elite, officials, judges, the military, and it is said elements close to the royal palace. And there's also the People's Alliance for Democracy, a royalist movement better known as the Yellow Shirts. Their mass protests led to the 2006 coup and helped oust two pro-taxing governments in 2008. Kasit Piromya, we've been talking about the need for some kind of negotiation to avoid a political vacuum. But what there is coming up as well is an election scheduled for July the 20th. Now, the People's Democratic Reform Committee, for example, has boycotted previous electoral processes. What is the position now? Do you see perhaps the elections as a way forward, a way out of this political stalemate?
As a politician, I do not run away from elections, but I think you have to have a very conducive atmosphere. They must be fair and free. And I would like to cite an example that the past 5 years, the leader of my party, Kasit, or myself, or most of the members of the Democrat Party were not permitted or allowed to appear on public televisions, which we have about 5 public televisions. So the public televisions have become the tools of the government side. So that cannot be a free and fair election. Second, we cannot move around Thailand. Everywhere we go, we are being confronted by the red shirts people who try to threaten us physically. And the police and the local authorities close one eye and allow the red shirts to keep on threatening and putting obstruction to our political campaigns and rallies and so on. So I think we have to work together to ensure that the atmosphere for the next election is conducive and there will be a free and fair one. So that's the first point. Second, just to clarify a bit, Kun Suthep is no longer a member of the Democrat Party. There is a complete break and divorce. So he is an independent man. He is very much on his own and he has nothing to do with the Democrat Party and vice versa.
Well, thank you for that point of clarification. But I'd like to go to Sean Boon-pracong with something else that you said there, the accusation that there is not a level playing field within the Thai political system, given the power that has been wielded by the Thaksin governments in recent years. What's your response to that accusation?
Well, let me address the disruption. I think for the past 6 months, it's been clear to international communities, whether they are diplomatic or international media, that actually it was PDRC where a third of former Democratic MPs are on the street disrupting election in Bangkok and all in the South, from preventing the registration and, of course, an election date on February 2nd. And secondly, in terms of justice, level playing field, well, let me tell you something. For those who seize the airport and the government house, still the court postponed that 22 times. So the issue of injustice, where there are still red in prison, it has sounding ring. And in fact, the only way that the Democrat, if they participate in this election, it would bring the normalcy back to Thailand as possible so we could go on with the country. And I beg the Democratic Party to really participate in this July election. It would be good for a long-term situation. And of course, we could discuss the political reform at the same time as they're so chosen. So I have no problem with that. But let's look forward to what Thailand should be.
Well, Kasit Piromya, that question of that election, what is going to make you take part in it?
Yes, I think 2 points. Just to make clarification, the successive protests against the Thaksin or the proxy government of Thaksin came because there was a lot of abuses of power, and against Yingluck from the beginning, because she started to bring about the amnesty for her brother. So instead of running the government, caring to the people, she concentrated her effort in trying to whitewash all of his crimes and his sins. So the protest came out because of that. So one must not forget the cause, the first cause of all of these problems of Thailand. Second, as of yesterday, Kun Apisit, the leader of my party, has written to Prime Minister Yingluck enclosing a 15-page roadmaps towards national reconciliation, elections, and referendum on the reform. So it's before her table and for her party and her supporters to have a look at it. And then we have also informed all the players concerned, including the election commissions. So there is a 15-page proposal to get out of this predicament of Thailand in a peaceful manner.
Well,
so everyone has to step back a bit and then have a look at that paper. And so if we can have some sort of reform, then we can go to the election. But we need to have an interim government in the meantime.
Well, this is a sticking point, isn't it? This is what you have been insisted upon, that there cannot be an election, or you will not take part in an election unless reforms happen first. It's chicken and egg, but you need a new government for reforms to happen. Is that not the case, Kasit?
I said that we will go to the election from the beginning. No, we said that the election must be held in a very conducive atmosphere. And I have just mentioned to you that so far we have been denied access to the public media. Second, physically we are being threatened all the time wherever we go around the country. And that has to do with the supporters of the Yingluck government.
Well,
so let's get rid of this element of threat and fear first. And second, let's agree on the basic elements of the reform. We need to reform the election process, to reform the political parties law, the parliamentary rules and so on, so that the majority and the minority, as Dr. Kriengsak mentioned, can work together for the country, but not this majoritarianism where the majority is the absolute power, like an absolute monarchy or an autocratic democracy. That cannot go on in Thailand anymore.
If I may, Kasit, I'd like to go to Kriengsak Chareonwongsak with what you brought up there, the 15-page memorandum which has been handed to the Prime Minister's office, a roadmap, as it has just been described, as a way out of this political impasse. Do you believe that there's any chance that such a document can help ease the way forward and can lead to proper elections happening?
Unfortunately, when you don't love one another in the real sense and you're outdoing one another, outwitting one another with image, it's going to be not trustable on both sides, and therefore I don't think it will work in any way, shape or form. Even though we all agree on both sides that reform is needed in Thailand, but the definition of reform is not clear, and also the length of reform required is unclear, and therefore it's a misnomer name to discuss reform before or after election. The real issue is that let's work together so that the benefit of the country happen. Let's have a reconciliation. Let's talk with one another to find a serious, proper and practical way out of this mess. We are in trouble, and no matter how much we argue, we can always find points that we can argue against or for. My point is this: we are at a juncture of history where there's a real struggle for power from both sides, and both sides doesn't mean the two parties. It means whoever find that either side will benefit them, they join and they argue against the other side. My plea is this: the country is in ruin. What we need to do is to find some reconciliation in a real way, with a genuine spirit of reconciliation, rather than just the letter of the law. I'm proposing that at this period, whether you have election or no election, the peace will not return. There will be conflict continually for years and years. It has been for years, and we must conclude it in a proper way by respect the rule of law. Why don't we set up a reconciliation government where every side is parted for a small period and discuss openly with open-heartedly and say, let's find a way forward so that we can agree on something and move forward to the real election eventually. Why can't we sit down and reconcile, not just anyone to be government, but all sides? The Pheu Thai can be in the government, the Democrat and other parties can be in the government, some technocrats can be part of it if they are helpful, and find a reconciliation, national reconciliation government that will pave the way for an open discussion with a genuine desire for peace.
Well, call there for reconciliation, but the debate will continue. My thanks to our guests, Sean Boon-pracong, Kasit Piromya and Kriengsak Chareonwongsak. And please do add your voice to this discussion. You can follow the story at facebook.com/AJ Inside Story. And on Twitter, send your comments to @AJ Inside Story. I'm Hanna. Thanks for watching and goodbye for now.